small business. Michael is a pensioner.
It's hard not to try and live in fear and choose to get by without being really panicked about your budget and about how you're going to be able to feed your family.
Our raw material is affected by oil prices and therefore by the cost of the dollar and the euro. So naturally those costs come directly through to us.
Well, it's very difficult to make ends meet. Prices are going up all the time. Pensioners on a state pension are finding it even more difficult. And sometimes they have to rely on their family and friends to go around for meals or even to go to food banks. A lot of pensioners I know feel ashamed and they lack the dignity that they deserve.
Philip Hammond, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
You can hear us okay.
I can.
Are you ashamed to hear that nurse talking about living in fear and being panicked about feeding her family?
Well, real household disposable incomes per capita in 2016 were at a record high, and real wages are forecast to rise in every year of the current 5-year forecast period. But look, we know that the economy is going through a period of uncertainty as we leave the European Union. That is why we need strong leadership under Theresa May to lock in the economic gains that we've made through the hard work of the British people over the last 7 years, and to ensure that we get the right deal from Europe as we leave the European Union.
Well, you can pluck any figures out of the air you want to support your argument, but the fact is people are contacting us, calling our programme day in, day out, week in, week out, and that is not the picture they're telling us. They're saying it's tough out there. We've had new figures this week showing inflation is rising once again, 2.7%. Wages are not keeping up with that. Average earnings have dropped 7.2% since 2010, taking into account inflation. Now, if you're saying that's not happening, it suggests you just don't have a grip on what's actually going on out there.
And what we've done since 2010 is cut the deficit by nearly 3/4 as a share of our GDP, getting our economy back into shape so that we can protect living standards in the future, created a net 2.8 million new jobs. So there are 2.8 million more people with the dignity of work taking home a weekly wage. These are the important things.
Well, let's
that
talk about
underpin
another
the
important thing. You may have
sustainability
cut the
of our
deficit, but
economy
you
for the
haven't
future.
cut national debt, have you? National debt as a percentage of GDP has risen sharply under the Conservatives' watch. Do you know what it stood at in 2010? National debt as a percentage of GDP.
So long as we are running a deficit, the national debt will go on increasing each year.
Sure, we know
Next
that,
year,
but I just want to
year,
examine your record on
this
that.
year,
I just want to examine your record on that.
This year, the national debt will peak. From next year, we will start to see the national debt fall every year. Those are not my figures. Those are the OBR's figures published at the spring budget. So this has been a long haul to rebuild our
But I
economy
just want people
from the
to be
depths of
absolutely
Labour's
in
recession.
the clear about how much national debt has risen under the Conservatives' watch. So as a percentage of GDP in 2010, do you know what it stood at?
It would have been in 2010. It would have been about 65%.
Around about the 60% mark, okay? Currently stands at what?
It currently stands in the 80s, and it will peak at about 87, 88%.
Are you proud
GDP.
of that record?
Look, this is a deficit that we inherited from Labour in 2010. We were spending nearly 10% of our GDP more than we were earning in tax revenue. We've got that figure down to 2.6% deficit last year. That is an enormous achievement, not by a government, but by the British people over the last 7 years. And we've got to get ourselves back living within our means. That is the only basis on which to have a sustainable economy for the future that can underpin rising living standards and high quality
But
public
this is the
services.
same plan that you've been pursuing since 2010, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't helped people. Strong and stable is the message we keep hearing, but it basically means more of the same. You're offering nothing new.
It is working. It's delivering a significant reduction in the deficit. We will.
For whom is it working?
We will
Who can you
continue
point to now and say this has worked for you?
We will continue to look. What about the 2.8 million people who are in work as a result of creating those 2.8 million net new jobs since 2010?
How many of those are migrant workers?
This is a growing economy. This is a growing economy which is delivering last year higher growth in Britain than in all but one of the advanced developed economies. And again, this year predicted to deliver higher growth than all the other large developed economies except for the United States. That's a great track record, and we've got to go on building on it.
You think you have a great track record when we hear about the NHS struggling, when we're constantly contacted by teachers and people in schools saying that they are facing cuts. They're having to pay out of their own money for basic things like scissors and paper. We're hearing, again, weekly about a crisis in mental health care, people with disabilities struggling to make ends meet. That's a great track record.
We're facing pressure in all our public services because of the ageing of our population. That's why we've put huge amounts of additional money into the National Health Service, an extra £10 billion a year in real terms by the end of this decade. That's why we put an extra £2 billion into social care at the spring budget. But look, we know that we've got more to do. We know that we face challenges in funding our public services, but the only way to do that is to build a strong and sustainable economy. And Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto, published yesterday, was a blueprint for crashing the British economy again, increasing corporation tax by a third to choke off